Hello, my name is Tom Cronin. In 1991 and 1992, I conducted a comprehensive series of interviews on camera with a diverse, often eclectic cross-section of Orleans residents. Some I knew personally, others I had never met. All had a solid connection to Orleans. The intent of these interviews was to record through the eyes of the people and their experience, their history of the town. Funding for the series was provided by a generous grant from the Community Preservation Council of $18,000 and a further contribution of $12,000 from American Heritage Realty, now Cape Cod Ocean View Real Estate. I sincerely hope you enjoy our series, In Those Days, Historic Voices of Orleans.
How long have you had the Miss Bessy?
Well, since 75, no, 85, excuse me, 85. And this is 92, so going on 92. So yeah, I'd say the balance would be 6 years.
Tom, glad you made it.
It all originated with the fact that I get tired of commercially fishing. And I was talking with this girl, Dee Dee Shea, that was working at the booth at Rock Harbor one time, and she said to me, she said, David, you can't believe the number of people that would like to go for a little boat ride, but they don't have either the resources or the attitude or the interest to go for several hours on a sport fishing vessel. And I began to think about that, and I said, Jesus, you know, I'd like to fill that vacuum and maybe take people for modest cruises in this inland estuary. And the more I thought about it, the more enthused I became, and the banks weren't terribly enthused, but I had financing anyway, so as a consequence, I bought the boat, and every year it's shown a little more promise and a little more promise, till today I'd characterize it as being marginally successful. Competitive-wise, I don't have much to speak of as a hell of a lot of competition. But it's proven, as I say, in a modest way to be somewhat successul.
Well, we're just going down to the ocean. And we're going to go down through the marsh because we have a rising tide right now, which is very much in our favor. All right. So we can be more expansive with a rising tide, otherwise we're somewhat constricted.
Have you improved the volume of business that you've done each year?
Primarily, yeah, primarily. I do trips with the Audubon, and I do trips independent of them. I mean, I'll do weddings, burials, bar mitzvahs.
Less is more. Yeah. That's good. That first step's the tricky one.
Yeah, I've had a few near accidents, not myself, but a few people, the patrons that wanted to either get on the boat prematurely or wanted to get off prematurely, and fortunately, nothing awkward has ever happened, but I've seen the potential for it on a few occasions.
Primarily in conjunction with the Audubon, in the sense that the Audubon Society is what you'd characterize as much as anything as an awareness group, and they're very conscious of the environment, and they promote the environment and the preservation of the environment. And I offer a facility for them to expose people to the environment. and as a consequence, it's been mutually advantageous. By that I mean they come with 6 people and a naturalist, and I provide the transportation. I meet people right here at the dock, and we go down for 3 hopefully graceful hours. And in terms of exposing people to the elements and the bird life and the flora and the fauna and so forth, and all through Nauset Harbor and Nauset Marsh. And 99 9/10 of the people return with a very satisfied attitude.
Everything to our immediate left or port side is the town of Eastham. Everything to our starboard side to the right is the town of Orleans. The Indians had an expression for it. Something like, it comes from a lake in western Massachusetts. Something goes like something Chimongagog. That means essentially, you fish on your side of the lake, I'll fish on my side of the lake, and nobody will fish us in the middle. You folks are from Western Mass, aren't you?
Yeah.
This game has about 68 letters in it, that lake out there. I don't know exactly where it is.
When I was a child, I remember walking down behind my father's store in East Orleans, and there were 1 or 2 homes in Meeting House Pond. And I could see my father cast and catch a bass right in Meeting House Pond. Wow. There were no boats in the pond. Well, wait a minute, I take exception. I think old Joe Gundry had a boat on the pond that owned they were the owners of the which is today has been for the past many years the restaurant there in East Orleans. But they had the windmill and a big home up on the pond. But as I say, there were only a couple of houses on the pond, and no boats in the pond, with the exception of Gundry's. Expense of being repetitive, but it was beautiful. You look around the whole pond and see nothing but vegetation. Now it's loaded with. There must be a couple hundred boats in the pond, and well, it's again, what can I say? It's contrast as opposed to comparison. But I used to love as a child to watch. Mayor's Duck Farm was very active at the time. And my father used to sell a lot of wine to some of the boys from the farm. That was always interesting when they'd stop in at the end of the day and buy a quarter or a pint of wine. A lot of good people. There were a lot of good people. I never forget when old Benny Freeman. Some people lived in a rather primitive fashion, like for instance, they still had outhouses. And I'll never forget the time old Benny Freeman was at his outhouse, and my sister and Selena Gould and I and a few other kids in the neighborhood, we caught Benny in his outhouse. Well, the real name for it was a shed house, but we went in and wrapped a bunch of rope around the outhouse and locked Benny in his outhouse so he couldn't get out. After he hauled and stamped and carried on for several hours, we took the rope off and let him loose, because by that time, by the time he came out the door, we were all running down the road. Didn't know who the hell it was, you know.
What is the?
He lived on. Well, that was Dry Swamp Lane at the time. People didn't like the name of the road, so they changed it to. Christ's sake, I can't remember. Dry Swamp Lane went to. I can't even think of the name of the goddamn road right now.
It was in the Meeting House Pond area?
Yeah. Well, right off of Great Oak Road. Yeah. But old Ben Freeman. Then he had a brother, Garfield, who lived over in Tonsett Road. I'll never forget the time he caught me trying to, well, he tried to catch me, but didn't. I shot a pheasant out in his back of his cornfield, and he came out all crazy, chasing me across that cornfield. But fortunately, before I shot the pheasant, I had already provided myself with an avenue of escape. In other words, I knew where the hell I was going to run after I shot the pheasant. And old Garf, yeah, he was Benny's older brother. I forget which one was actually older, but that was funny.
But donated to a local conservation trust. And given all the building and construction in Cape Cod, it's rather refreshing to see even something of that size that will remain in its natural state for generations to come.
No one's built anything on it.
And nobody will ever build there.
What is the history of the Bessom family in Orleans? Your father's name was what?
Well, my father's name was David. I'm a junior. And my grandfather came down here originally with the Winslow family. I think they had something to do with United Shoe Machinery. It was via Beverly, Mass. and Brookline, Mass.
That would have been in the early 1900s, 1905.
Yeah, well, my father graduated from high school. It's interesting you should mention that today, Tom, because my father I was cleaning out the garage yesterday, started to clean it out, and I saw my father's high school diploma, Orleans High School, 1932. So he would have had been, I think they came in the early 20s.
I'm 50 years of age. When I was a child, that was all dairy farm up there. It was called Ruggles Farm. And a lot of the homes you see were non-existent. A lot of the vegetation you see was non-existent. The only house I remember in my childhood is that very large one up there with the American flag flying. It used to belong to somebody called Commodore Blodgett. Wow. And you can tell by just by the architecture of some of these homes, they're relatively recent. Yeah. But interestingly enough, with the old Cape Cod, as you know, waterfront property was not all that desirable. As a matter of fact, it was the least desirable property. They might have had a pigsty or a fish shanty down near the water, but they would not have had. They would not have built their homes that close to the water. They wanted to get away from the elements and get further inland, where they were protected. But they did love the access to the water.
So you grew up in New Orleans. You went to the elementary school where the town hall is now?
Oh yeah, yeah.
What was the name of that school?
Well, I guess I would call it Orleans Elementary School.
Used to be the high school.
Occasionally I'd miss the bus and my father would say to me, "Oh, Christ sake, get out there and get walking." He says, "It's only a stone's throw." Those are his two favorite expressions to me. Stone's throw. School's only a stone's throw away, and the other expression was, "A bird in the hand, boy, is worth two in the bush." We had the Yellow Arrow gang. We raided Dr. Kelly's office and threw apples when he had patients in the office. And
right on Monument Road.
no, he was at the time. He was on.
Turn around so you see the whole fish.
He was on River Road.
Beautiful.
This kid had to get up and recite a poem for the class years ago. We'll say in 1920 in Orleans High School. I mean Orleans Grammar School. So these 3 or 4 smartasses made this poem up for the kid to get up and recite before the class. It goes, Heman Griffin, lightning rod, Jesus Christ, almighty God, hell and damnations come to town, strip her off and lay her down. And the kid got up and he recited the poem, and the teacher was so pissed off that he whacked him side the head or whatever, just dismissed him from the school or the class or whatever, maybe just for that day.
Am I going to be on television?
Absolutely.
Well, the fellow on our left is making a movie, so. Well, History of the Cape.
History of the Cape.
Well, more or less this immediate area. I don't know what context really it's all going to be in.
Well, you know all the good stories.
Where do you generally sell your stuff, Chatham?
No, I got some restaurants they pay more.
Exactly. I agree with it.
So Orleans Elementary School and then Orleans High School, where the middle school is now.
Yeah.
How many kids? So there would have
There
been
were, we were
kids in a class.
Well, there were.
50s?
I was in. We had a very, very modest class. I was in a class of only 29 graduating
See
students.
this house with the red roof?
Yeah, the widow's school up there. That with that little roof up and down.
They're still working on it, but they've got a widow's walk, and it almost looks like you could say like the top of an old Coast Guard station.
See, I was in the last class to graduate from Orleans High School. After that, it became Nauset Regional.
That was 1959.
Yeah, it was 59 because it became regionalized in 1960.
Mm-hmm.
The town was a lot more simplistic at the time, simply because of it was less populous. We didn't, when I was a child, we didn't have town water. We didn't have cable television. We didn't have, well, when I was a child, when I was a young child, we didn't even have television. It wasn't until early 50s that we had our first television, but there's so many contrasts. But you see, the thing of it is, it all evolves ever so gradually that you don't think any one movement or any one technological advancement or improvement is a threat to your lifestyle, because you tend to receive it as an improvement as opposed to a detriment. And so collectively speaking, when you look at it in the sum total, it's a hell of a contrast between what it was when I was a child as opposed to what it is today.
Yeah. One day you wake up, you look around, you say, "Oh my God, what happened?"
Yeah, I used to love, some of our entertainment when I was a child. We'd sit on the porch in Main Street in East Orleans and we'd count the trucks going back to Mayle's Duck Farm with loads of grain when the train came into town. See, we had a rail system here in the late 40s. And the trucks from Mayle's Duck Farm would go up and they'd load up and they'd go all night long bringing the grain back and forth. I mean, not back and forth, from the train to the farm.
Wow.
And And there's always a bunch of spillage along the side of the road. And wherever the truck would take a turn or something like that, they would come in 100-pound sacks.
So that duck farm was a huge operation.
Yeah. It's a very viable facility.
Yeah.
And probably one of the most productive ones, we'll say, during the Second World War in the Eastern Seaboard.
So they provided ducks for restaurants?
Ducks and chickens.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it wasn't just strictly ducks, it was chickens as well.
Yeah. Did you ever ride that train that you're talking about that used to come in down there by Snows? That's where the depot was, I think.
Oh yeah, well occasionally what we do was, well, you know, if we didn't have the money for a movie or something like that, when the train would be coming through, we'd jump on the train that was leaving the depot through the center of town, and then just as she would be crossing, this is rather dangerous, I wouldn't encourage kids to do it, but none of us ever got hurt. We only did it like, we'll say, in a half a dozen times. But then just as she was crossing the highway in Brewster, where the overpass is today, where the bike trail is, the bike path, we'd jump off and then we'd hitchhike home. And that was that was an adventure for us. Yeah. You know, it was like something out of Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer, you know. That was a genuine adventure for us. The ride would only last, we'll say, 10 minutes, yeah. But that was genuine adventure for us.
In the 40s then, with the period that you're talking about in that train, did that train continue on all the way to Provincetown, or had that been eliminated?
I think, I do not know. Good question, I don't know.
You never took the train to P-Town?
No, that would have been, that would have been more than the average adventure. That would have been a little excessive, I think. But, maybe it's just, we didn't have the courage for it, or I don't know. It was, should I say, it was out of our realm, so to speak.
Yeah. Brewster was far enough.
Yeah, we just got to hop on, hop off, and then we knew we had the capacity to get home and still get home when we were supposed to be home.
Yeah, without wet feet and all that. What did you do after you left Orleans High School?
Oh, I went to several institutions.
Penal institutions?
No, it was institutions of education.
Ah.
And after my first couple of years in the first one,
what school was that?
That would have been Boston College. After my sophomore years at Boston College, they wished me luck elsewhere.
The absence of your presence was requested. The presence of your absence
was requested. Yes. So that's a graceful way to put it. But, and then I took some courses at BU, and I ended up at Parsons College in Fairfield, Iowa, and I was finally ready to apply myself, which in fact I did. Then I went to law school after that, but after a couple of years of law school, I preferred to go lobster fishing. And I guess somebody said, you can't get the sand out of your feet, David, can you? And I enjoyed immensely fishing for lobster, but what I'm doing now is something I feel like I can grow old gracefully doing. Lobstering is very intensive and very demanding physically, although there's a tremendous satisfaction out of catching lobsters. It's extremely demanding. And the rewards can be substantial, and they can be very frustrating at the same time in terms of all the aggravations you have to deal with.
Which law school did you attend?
Suffolk Law School in Boston.
Oh, yeah.
Good institution.
Yeah. Yeah. So you'd characterize your working activities from the time you left school, basically
water related, yeah. Whether it be in a commercial capacity in terms of pursuing a certain species or conveying people for hire. Geez, you know, I think again about Mayle's duck farm. Never forget the time that old Howard Snow caught Billy, Drew, and I. This was about 2 o'clock in the morning. Both Billy and I had 16-gauge automatic shotguns. And we were shooting rats inside of a chicken coop. Well, we thought it was so much fun to shoot the rats as they run along the rafters, but see, we were rather insensitive to the fact that every time we shot a rat, we were blowing holes through a roof. So, Jesus Christ, Howard Mayo came over. We'd been on there for about, I don't know, 20 minutes, half an hour, blowing the rats away. See, we had flashlights. Billy would run the rats as the rats would run along the raft, bang, bang, bang. And this is, they're just shooting away at random, a couple of boxes of shells. And Howard Mail came in and said to us, "What in the hell are you guys doing to my chicken house?" Yeah. Well, it's over your head. I consider everything over your head deep.
Yeah, it doesn't look that deep.
Believe me, it is.
You want me to go try?
I bet that's 8 feet right there.
Yeah.
Really?
Any scuba diving for lobsters in here, David?
Yeah, but it's minimal in terms of what they catch. But there are places in here, I'll show you, but I don't want it for publication. In conjunction with the Conservation Department in Eastham, or the Natural Resources Department in Eastham, put up a few years ago, with the anticipation that these the osprey would nest here in 2 to 3 years. And the most phenomenal thing about it was they were 2 or 3 weeks the birds were here. Yeah. And they keep coming back. We have yet to see young out of here though. This particular year there have been male and 2 females, and it only appears like they're setting up house. Nothing with any sense of raising young yet. That's the osprey. Close enough now to know what I'm talking about.
He's got a white chest, I think.
Looks like.
I don't want to give you any height, but
Oh wow, the egrets behind. Oh, that's terrific.
Here you go.
yeah, that's an osprey. But I can't tell male or female.
Gorgeous. Gorgeous, gorgeous. It's going around this post. Maybe go around this post.
Might.
Just do that. Perch.
I might go to the other one.
The little tern's buzzing them off.
And the difference in technique, the tern will go in head first and the osprey goes in feet first.
Oh, grab some.
Watch your balance now, I'm going to back down. Look how clear the water is here today, folks. It's going to come about. I just keep telling you these things so you're conscious of your balance, that's all. This is about as close as you're going to get, Tom. Yeah, the osprey won't up. They don't land on the marsh, on the floor of the marsh. They're perch oriented, so to speak. Those particular birds, you know, folks, they're making a substantial comeback, and down over in the vineyard in Austinville, like if Jackie O has a perch on her property, the neighbors want one, and they've made a substantial comeback over there.
So you and Billy Giroux were pals then, huh?
Yeah, oh yeah. Billy was, yeah, we were in school together. He was a year ahead of me.
That's quite a far away.
Yeah, it was. You know, for recreation as kids, sometimes we couldn't afford to go to a movie, or the movie wasn't all that tempting. We'd go down to the duck farm and we'd kill rats.
When I first
It sounds rather brutal right now, but we'd tip the grain bins on the edge, and the rat would run out. We'd all chase after it. Well, the rat didn't have much of a chance with half a dozen teenagers with clubs, but at the time it seemed like recreation, but it doesn't appeal to me today.
When I first,
I mean, even rats gotta live, right?
yeah.
What I would like to impress upon you folks is the dynamics of this area. It's changing all the time. 50 years ago, this inlet was way back below that landmass behind us. You know, that's probably in excess of a mile. But what has happened here essentially is simply that what land mass is being lost on the north side is being accumulated on the south side. It's ever so gradually progressing to the north. But that's subject to change. You know, we got a violent storm, like an incidence of we'll say a hurricane, or it doesn't even necessarily have to be that. Coincidence of high tide and a lot of wind. It could break through anywhere along this fragile barrier beach along here, which is essentially, for the most part, only like 100 yards wide. We're going to go down near that area. But also to impress upon you the fact that the dynamics of the area, that channel over there to our left, facing due north, was non-existent where that boat is 2 years ago. But essentially, why they shut it off for the partial part of the season was to protect the nesting birds a little further to the south here, because the four-wheel drive vehicles and the four-legged predation is quite indiscriminate. And as a consequence, to protect the bird colony, they've shut it off. But now the birds have fledged. As of a few days ago, I think as of August 12th and 10th, they've allowed it to be open. This is right here is where the fencing begins for the birds. These are the least terns. They're the smallest of the terns, hence the name least. But they put the fencing up primarily, as I say, for their benefit, to deny four-wheel drive predation and four-legged predation. But some of the birds don't realize the fencing's for their benefit, and some of them nested outside of it in years past. So what they've done, they've expanded the fencing to accommodate more birds.
You have the Miss Bessy in the water from when to when, David?
Well, probably as late as Thanksgiving. It's all contingent upon the interest and weather. If people keep showing an interest, particularly Audubon, I'll probably stay up till Thanksgiving. I like to get the boat out of the water when it's still graceful to maintain it. In other words, winterize it and wash it down. And I don't want to deal with freezing temperatures, and I want to get the boat out of the water, clean it up, and prepare it for winter storage before it becomes too awkward.
No. What are you going to do this winter?
Good question. I don't care to do any winter commercial fishing. I have very much of a negative attitude towards that. It's very demanding physically, and the rewards can be marginal, or they can be exceptional. But the resource in the fishing industry today is such that you really know what the hell you're doing to make it a productive endeavor.
How are things going over there?
Good. There's a lot out there today.
A lot of what?
It's, a lot of everything. Out on the back, the best bet if you want to see stuff, land them on the north.
These people, we're not going to get off. We're just going to take a cruise by.
Okay. Probably about 1,800 semi-common clubbers, a couple hundred red knot.
Yeah.
Couple hundred
The owl been just as devastating lately?
No, he hasn't. But then again, all the birds are leaving.
Yeah.
Most of the terns are finished.
Yeah. This is probably one of the most populous islands in the whole of the Northeast for common terns to nest on. And they're very successful, primarily because, number one, it is an island, and therefore it lacks four-legged predation like foxes and raccoons and skunks and so forth. And number two, there's a tremendous resource of food right in the interior part of the harbor here. Let me show you essentially the birds we're looking at. The common tern, although there are other tern varieties interspersed, but it's primarily the common tern up in the upper left there. The upper left is that's the adult common tern. Can't get quite close enough right now because of the tide. I'd like me to show you the distinction between the adult and the young ones. I love it when these birds come in the month of May, or late April, early May, because to me it's like the advent of warm weather. Yeah. And I hate to see them leave, and we'll say in September and October. They don't all come at the same time, they don't all leave at the same time. But when they leave, you know, we know what's after that. So, you know. There is one bird in here that come afterwards, after dark, that can be considered very much of a intimidator and predator of the whole bird colony. That'll be the great horned owl. Yeah. The adult birds will just vacate the nest until that bird leaves. And then because of, you know, in the darkness and the cool summer evening, those eggs don't have the benefit of the heat they should have. And if that happens frequently enough, you're losing some of the eggs. Interspersed here, and these larger birds, as we head towards the southwestern end of this little island, these are the laughing gulls. They weren't here 10 to 12 years ago, but they used to essentially nest down in Monomoy, but now they've moved up into here. I think they're kind of a pain in the ass, but because they compete for the same area in turf and food as the common terns do. The birds are rather integrated right now because the terns don't necessarily have to protect their young so much because most of them are fledged, and the laughing gulls won't offend them once they're big enough.
They put little wooden boxes out there for them to nest?
Yeah, they put those out for a particular type of tern that's rather endangered, to give them a little more protection. So this activity goes on all day long, every day. The adults are bringing the fish in for the young birds. They encourage the bird to come closer to the shore, and they want to make the bird aware that the fish comes from the water. And eventually they'll fly and follow the adult and learn how to fish for themselves. In June of '66, a couple of English paratroopers rode from this harbor in about a 21-foot dory. I have a book, I'll show you some pictures of it. But in this rock right ahead of us here, there's a plaque on it in Gaelic that commemorates the occasion.
They rode from where to where, David?
They rode from here to the Aran Isles. They rode went to the Atlantic. Took them a little over 90 days to do it. These guys were well trained and they persevered and they did make it. In 1605, this harbor was much deeper and much more expansive than what it is. By that I mean there was a lot of the marsh you're acquainted with today was non-existent then. But when Champlain sailed in here in 1605, he had an encounter in this shoreline right here. This is Snow Shore. History has it that his carpenter came ashore and had a confrontation with the Indians. But he recorded the parameters of the whole interior part of the harbor, and they came up with this rather primitive map, which I find to be quite interesting.
How old is that map, David?
1941. The inlet where it was in 1941 approximately, and it's ever so gradually crept to the north to right now it's where the A is in Nauset, right about there. What landmass is being lost here is being accumulated on the south side. It's just moved along in ever so gradually increments.
David, do you think that it might break through down closer to Nauset Heights?
Yes.
and then have two openings on the outer beach?
It'll be two openings in a temporal fashion.
Do you think that might happen?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
What are you going to do this winter?
Yeah, the winter's the time of the year for me when things are rather stagnant. So I read a lot, and I try to be somewhat constructive with my hands, with an optimistic attitude, just that I can, you know, bottom line is pay your bills and look forward to spring. I don't care to do any winter commercial fishing. I have very much of a negative attitude towards that. It's very demanding physically, and the rewards can be marginal or they can be exceptional. But the resource in the fishing industry today is such that you really know what the hell you're doing to make it a productive endeavor.
Okay, Colin. I'm gonna come down a lot closer to you.
David, thank you.
Thank you, John.
That was a good trip. You were on a good show.
Thank you. We come again with the Audubon, and you have the benefit of, you know, somebody that can really, can be much more informative than myself, such as Bob Prescott. I think you'd gather a lot in terms of material and understanding the marsh and the intensity of the area and all that.
We saw a lot today, though.
It's a very unique spot.
Yeah.
You got to realize that in the outer arm of Cape Cod, this is one of the few in a flight pattern from, we'll say, from Monomoy to Chatham, all the way to Provincetown and further north. It's one of the few nesting areas for a lot of birds. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes this area so unique.
Thanks again, Captain. Good trip.
Day.